Hi, Neil Thurston. So yeah, Chief Technologist for Logicalis. Talking to you today about delivering IT at the speed of business. So really, what that's about is how does IT become agile, so deliver agility to the business. And I want to talk to you, I guess, through the use case of digital. So what I want to talk about is how do we deliver digital transformation. Can't even speak properly today. Late night, let's not go into that one. How do we deliver digital transformation that gives us IT at the speed of business? Okay. So first of all, let's just define what digital is. I'm sure you've had plenty of presentations along this sort of thing. So effectively, digital is all about the new connected world. Be that with social media and the way that we now collaborate across the globe instantly. Be that the fact that everyone in this room has probably got 2 or 3 devices from a mobile perspective. Be that from the fact of analytics. So the world is just generating petabytes of data every second, and how do we mine that? How do we find the new value in that data? And then finally in cloud, which is, I guess, is where we get relevant today's theme around software defined. So how do we look at, how does software defined play a part in digital ready infrastructure that enables your digital transformations? So what does digital actually give you? What does it enable? Well, it enables innovation. So it means that, we can have new ways of delivering services, new ways of consuming services across our devices. We have multiple new data sources, from the phones that we have to all this Internet of Things. So there's currently a cycle race across America, and part of Logicalis America, we're sponsoring various teams across that. So everyone's all wired up. At the end of each day, we do analytics on the performance of not only the cyclist and how their health is going, but the performance of the bike and the parts on the bike. So this whole Internet of Things has given us a whole new massive set of data to work with. And equally, just the increased agility at which we can create new services. So, the previous presentation talked about new catalogue, about the way that things just get done quicker. There's just a basic agility that it brings. And that, in itself, gives you the ability to disrupt markets. So, there's the usual things, people talk about Uber and taxis and things like Airbnb and accommodation. So, there's new things like food. So, a bizarre one, talking to a colleague last week, and he was doing some cooking, had some friends round, doing some cooking, ran out of one of the particular herbs he was after, so went on to Amazon, got their food service delivery, and within 30 minutes, the herb arrived at his door, and he carried on cooking. And speaking to the particular client that we were talking to at that particular point in time, which was Sainsbury's, they're quite worried about how that's disrupting potentially their marketplace. So, digital is disrupting various market sectors. So I guess the question is it going to disrupt, higher education? Probably not, I guess. You probably know better than I do. But essentially, we've had, since the early 1970s, where things like the Open University. So, the remote learning thing's been around for a while. So is remote learning going to digitally disrupt us? Probably not, but it opens up new potential revenue streams. Within the campus, transforming the classroom. So, spoken to a few of you, and, when you can pre-record, pre-create your content for the classroom, the students can study that before they come to the classroom, and the actual classroom space is then used to discuss the content, challenge the content, and actually do the thinking around the content, because the students have done the work, hopefully, before coming into the classroom. Collaboration between institutes, ultimately, no matter where we are, things come down to, commercials, funding. So how do we engage? How can we be smart around engaging institutes to come to us to do their research? I couldn't help put this one in, sorry, but this is one of the ones that the analysts will talk about, which is digital downgrade. So the fact that we now got the millennial children coming through as the new raft of students. They've got all these devices. They're used to all this instant gratification of services that they do on their devices, and they come into the university and potentially, you talk about the situation where there's a digital downgrade because the experience isn't quite what they're used to in the outside world. So it's, again, digital can help us transform that. And finally, things like analytics. So again, the data is there. We can track. You've got Wi-Fi across your campuses. You can track where your students go. So maybe you want to profile the successful students, and a lot of them go to things like the library. Your unsuccessful students don't go. And when you're doing things like marking, you're profiling early intervention when students aren't quite getting up to scratch. So, with analytics, you can get a lot of new insights to capture those students, so you haven't got to look at or worry so much about things like student retention. So those are just a few things that I sort of threw together, but like I said, you guys have more and more insight around how these types of technologies can leverage you to do new things. So what's actually underpinning it all? Cloud, be that private clouds that you build, be that private clouds that are hosted, be that public clouds, or be that a combination of hybrid clouds. Now, I'm suspecting that most of you are in a type of a hybrid cloud environment because you will have a lot of services you run in-house, and you may well already have some SaaS services, Office 365 being, I guess, being an obvious thing, that you consume externally. So you're already in that sort of hybrid type environment. Automation. Automation and cloud, or automation and software-defined infrastructure go hand in hand. So the whole reason of having a software-defined infrastructure is the fact that you can automate it, is the fact that you can set policies. Why would you want to set policies? Again, previous presentation talked about having generalists around. Policy-based automation is all about setting the operational window that you want your infrastructure to run at. And it will run within that window for you with the software-defined infrastructure. So you've got centralized controller, you set a policy on it, and it will make sure it runs within that window. So policy-based automation is the thing that allows us to go from high touch, requiring a lot of specialist skills, to low touch. So we require just generalists. Obviously, the nirvana, as things progress, is to go to no touch at all. So high touch to low touch is where we are today. In future, as automation and new technologies like composable infrastructure, for example, come along, we'll get that move towards the no touch. Data fabric. So today, a lot of customers we talk to, they have what we call islands of innovation. So they've got digital strategies. They've got some stuff in Amazon. They've got some stuff in Azure. They've got other pockets. But what they end up with is islands of innovation. Nothing is really joined. High street retailer that we work with, I was there last week, and they've been using Amazon a lot for their test and development. The issue that they've now got is that their developers have written against the Amazon platform as a service, and so that all the services and new applications they've written are completely tied into Amazon. They can't take them anywhere else because they're totally dependent on the Amazon platform services that support it underneath. So they've now got a new problem. So whilst adopting cloud is great, there's a greater thing you have to think about. Things such as creating a data fabric. So how do we make sure that we can connect everything together, that our data is truly portable between services? And finally, identity. So again, here, we are going to end up in a situation where some services are run in-house, some services are run off of cloud, some services are consumed as SaaS. How do we give the end user a seamless experience? You don't want every time you want to use a different service, you've got to log on to it. How do we create that same seamless experience for our IT operations people? So again, every time they want to make a change, you don't want to have to go and log into each different platform, and you just want one existing, ideally, set of tools to manage it all from. So these sort of the foundations of digital. I know I'm getting a little bit tenuous because software defined is over here, but the point I want to make is that Software-defined is just a piece of the puzzle. You know, there's a greater piece going on here, and you need to address kind of all these things to have a true platform to work with. And when you're in this sort of space with that true platform, I guess what we're really talking about here is hybrid IT. So as we said, hybrid IT, it's an environment, an architecture that we create that's seamless to the end user, seamless to the operator. Key thing, you know, when you're just spinning up islands of innovation at Amazon, and it's a line of business, it's a particular department over there doing things, they're probably not really worried about what your corporate security policy is, or what are you any regulations that you're under. Whoops. Didn't do that. But of course, these things are there. So, you know, security, governance, compliance, regulations, all those things do apply to some things. And that's why things like creating a data fabric is all about identifying what needs to be put under appropriate governance, regulations, and so on. And then those get put into those policy-based automation things, that we make sure that we automate this particular data about students could be deemed as GDPR, so it's all EU data protection, so we only want to put it within UK situations, we want to protect it, we want to make sure it's not open and so on. So, you know, we can set policies then once we've classified the data and so on. Hybrid architecture with secure data fabric you control. So use Amazon services, use Azure services, you do data encryption. So they provide data encryption services for you, but they hold the keys. So the keys to actually unlock that encryption is held within those platforms. So, you know, if for whatever scenario, you know, the old subpoena came along from a government body and they were forced to unlock and unencrypt the data, they could. But there are multiple solutions out there that allow the end user to hold the keys for your encrypted data. So you manage that data, and no matter where you put it, public, private cloud, or whatever, it's all totally encrypted, and the only person who can decrypt it is you. Identity platform to manage everything. Yep, we said that, seamless experience. And then ideally, as we said, you kind of want to manage everything using existing tools and practices. You know, digital transformation is hard enough as it is. Like we said, there's various things already that have been spoken about, such as, you know, having to repurpose staff. You know, the last thing you want to do is then also have to rewrite all your practices, get a completely new tool set that no one's familiar with, and so on. So, you know, there's all these different things to take into consideration. But if we can address all of these, then what we can deliver is that digital-ready infrastructure based on that software-defined architecture. That then means that, you know, no matter what comes along, we've got that agility with the automation piece, with the software-defined piece, that we can instantly repurpose things. We can react to whatever the market requires, or the business or the institution requires. I'll press a little harder. There we go. So just really as a use case, I'll just talk through, I guess, what we've done within the actual digital transformation within Logicalis. So for us, you know, historically, we're a systems integrator. We work with some of you, and we do things like building private clouds, putting in automation platforms, and all that great stuff. So when we came to designing our own cloud platform, we could have designed it so that we just looked like an Amazon or an Azure. So we create our own platform, we have our own services on it, and, you know, it's a one-size-fits-all. That's the platform, that's how you've got to use it. But, you know, knowing that our customers are going through the digital transformation, knowing that hybrid IT is really where we're going to end up, we thought it's much better that we actually kind of sip our own champagne, eat our own dog food, whatever the analogies you'd like to use. We basically build what we do to customers. So we effectively just built a converged infrastructure, laid up with VMware software-defined data center technologies on top, Veeam data protection, vCloud platform, so kind of a standard tool set to work with, and that's what we've built. So it's built as a hybrid cloud. It's built to integrate with our customer environments. I guess another key thing is it's also built to integrate with cloud providers. And again, taking into account the thing we said earlier about your data and where it goes, and maybe data not wanting to go elsewhere. So the public clouds have direct connections. So with Azure, you might have heard of ExpressRoute. With Amazon, you might have heard of direct connections. So these facilities allow you to leverage the compute resource on those platforms whilst disaggregating your data. So your data stays off the cloud, but you can use the cloud economics of the compute resource. So that's what we've done in here. So we've integrated our cloud we keep the data either on our customer premise or in our data centers, but we use direct connectivity to leverage the public cloud when people want to. So that's how we get around things like data sovereignty issues, like we say GDPR and all those type of things. So what can we deliver with that platform that's based on that software-defined data center? So we carve out virtual private data centers. So for us, it's multi-tenanted, so we can deliver across organizations. But again, these technologies that you consume are the same technology, so equally you can multi-tenant out. So you can multi-tenant your platform to other institutions, to research partners, whatever it happens to be. From a commercial perspective, there's subscriptions and there's metering. Again, things that you can offer out from these types of platforms. I guess the nice thing about it is that the platforms also work with today's technologies, but also tomorrow's technologies. So you can deliver Windows, Linux, the Lexi, so the containers, Docker type environment, the Windows 2016 container environment as well. All those types of environments can run off the same platform. And that's quite a key thing. There's a lot of discussion. Hands up if you've heard of Gartner talking about bimodal infrastructures. Good. Excellent. So bimodal infrastructures, they talk about mode one being the legacy, what we've had for years of applications tightly coupled to the infrastructure. They rely upon the infrastructure for their scale up, scale out, resilience and so on, versus the new mode 2 cloud native applications that provide their own resilience. They're completely stateless. They don't require, they're not tied to any particular OS. They're totally mobile. And so Gartner talks about the fact that you have to run two infrastructures. I slightly disagree with that. I think the wording is slightly wrong. I think you can have one infrastructure and two platforms. So I think you can, whatever it is underneath, whether it's FlexPod in our case, Nutanix before, I think you can have the same platform underneath, and the same infrastructure underneath, so you have a common infrastructure. We spent the last 10 years converging infrastructures and hyper-converging infrastructures. Let's not unbundle all that good work now. So let's have one common infrastructure, but put two platforms on top. So what we're seeing now is people having, the legacy stuff is getting virtualized on VMware, and where they have that new style of cloud-native DevOps type environments, that's going on something like OpenStack. But it's running on the same tin and software-defined layers underneath. Sorry, I think I digressed there. So value add. So value add from using those software-defined technologies, connectivity. So we can connect anywhere. You can connect anywhere. You can connect premise. You can connect to cloud providers, hosting centers like Logicalis or wherever. You can connect to directly up to the public cloud services. Data fabric. We talk about the outcome of all these things being that you've got a really easy to use, low touch environment, but that's because all the work goes in up front. All the complexity is in the planning, which includes things like sorting out your data fabric. So doing a data discovery, classifying all your data, setting policies on what's going to be allowed to go where, and then putting a policy system in place that will automate all that for you. Nice segue into automation. So automation in a simple sense, just talking about basic provisioning life cycle, so the agility to create, spin up new services. And then finally, again, the identity piece. So what are the actual use cases? What do we do with this stuff? So I guess the main one, to be honest, that we find is people are sort of about capacity augmentation. So it's about right-sizing the environment for you on site and then potentially using cloud services to burst. It's about potentially looking at having smaller amounts of storage on site and using cloud archive storage for archive and for write once, sort of media type files, anything will go in sort of object storage. Application migration, so migrating things across. So again, kind of back to that bimodal type discussion. Analytics, so again, we can spin up data lakes, we can spin up analytics platforms, we can create IoT hubs. So anything you want to do with research, anything you want to do around looking at how do we get more student-centric, we can spin up all these things kind of on demand. And then finally, DevOps. Appreciate not necessarily relevant in this space, but just the simple idea that we can, the way that we talk to a lot of the banks, for example, is that it sounds counterintuitive. You fail fast in the cloud, you develop, and then you run in production on premise. So the idea being that, in your cheap resource, think of things like WD-40, the old oil spray stuff. The reason it's WD-40 is because it was the 40th attempt when you got it right. So 39 times they failed. So how quickly you fail is how quickly you get to the actual time it actually works and you get your final product. So fail fast is what you use public cloud for. And then you run in production on-premise because that's where you've got all the resilience, all the governance, all the security, and everything else. So that's typically how sort of like financial institutes and that sort of environments kind of work. So I guess finally, what I alluded to earlier is that software-defined infrastructure and what you do with it, in this case, this use case being digital transformation, but in whatever you do with it, everything is in the planning. You need to go through an exercise that says, this is all the data that we're going to have and this is what we're going to do with it. These are all the services we have. These are the services that eventually we want to run as SaaS. We don't want to run these in-house at all. These are the ones we're going to keep. These are the ones that are going to be legacy. Are we going to end up in this bimodal thing? Yes, we are. But what we'll do is we'll have chargeback on the legacy. So eventually, it'll become too expensive to whichever line of business is consuming those apps. And we'll make the new digital platform cheaper. So we'll fund that migration strategy that way, for example. So it's all in the planning. So at Logicalis, for example, we have a whole hybrid IT set of workshops that we create what we call the pathway. So we work on you with a digital transformation pathway that says, right, these are the outcomes. This is where you want to be in 3 years' time. This is what you want to look like in 3 years' time. This is where you are now. And let's work out the pathway for how we get from A to B. Looking at all the services you want to consume as SaaS, things you want to get off onto cloud platforms, things you don't, what's going to be migrated, what's not, etc. Once you've got that, it's then relatively easy. The technology is actually the easy bit. It's all that upfront plan is the hard bit. You then implement, and then you obviously deliver the outcomes. Okay. Whew. Pretty much on time. So, I think that is about me. So, hopefully, what we've just gone through is that software-defined infrastructure is really the cornerstone for the next generation, what a lot of people call the third platform. So it's the piece that's going to enable you to make those digital outcomes, to attract students, to secure research organisations to work with, and so on. So it's the platform that's going to help you move forwards. And hopefully, what we've gone through there gives you some idea of the types of things that you just need to consider and think about as you start your way on that sort of pathway. Okay, so that's pretty much me, so happy to invite any questions. or not, or you can just go for lunch. But nothing about the bobsleigh. It's a long time ago now. Yes, we did have to wear latex. No, great. Okay, thank you very much.